Hello and welcome to This One Thing, a daily video devotional coming to you from First Pres of Fort Lauderdale. And in it, we want to provide one thing for you to consider throughout the day. And we'll do that by looking at one of the scripture passages from the daily readings in the Revised Common Lectionary. And today's passage comes from John chapter 6. This is just after Jesus has fed the 5,000. And so this comes right after Jesus has provided for the physical needs of a group of people. And I want you to hear these words. From verse 35, Jesus says, "I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never be hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty." Now, this verse jumped out at me in thinking about the new grocery store experience. That is, we walk down aisles with some empty shelves. We see people walking around with gloves on. We see some people wearing face masks. And it was just a couple of days ago, I was trying to check out, and it was difficult to know where to get in line as people were spacing themselves out 6 and 8 feet apart, and you didn't know where the line started. It's an interesting time. How are you doing? Are you feeling anxious? Are you relaxed? Are you worried? There's a podcast that I listen to about personal financial management. It's called The Mad Fientist. And in an episode last week, the host Brandon, in talking about weathering the current financial storm, said this. He said, the time to prepare for the storm is not during the hurricane. The time to prepare for the storm is not during the hurricane. Here in South Florida, we know a lot about hurricane preparedness, and we know that the time to prepare for the storm is not during the hurricane, right? It's not even the day before the hurricane or the days before the hurricane, as some people choose to do, but it's really the rest of the year that we ought to be preparing for the storm. We prepare before the crisis. In this verse in John, Jesus is saying that those who believe in the promises of God will never be thirsty and will never be hungry. And my sense is that this verse is either reassuring or it's meaningless. That we either believe the promises of God or we don't. And if we don't, then this verse is probably seen as a mere platitude and met with an eye roll, right? What do you mean I'll never be thirsty or never be hungry? And I wonder if the way that we react to this verse doesn't say something about our own spiritual preparedness for crisis. You see, we view crisis through the lens of our own spiritual preparedness. And if we are prepared, then we see it through a lens of knowing that God is holding all of this in his hands. And when we view crisis through a lens of spiritual unpreparedness, that leads to anxiety, it leads to fear and worry. So here's the one thing to consider today. And in the coming days and the weeks ahead, you're going to find yourself with time you didn't know you were going to have, right? This found time. Will you use some of it to begin investing in your spiritual health? Will you use some of it in new spiritual disciplines of daily scripture reading, daily prayer, perhaps journaling? I'll include a link just below to the Revised Common Lectionary daily readings for you to use. Will you use this opportunity for growth, or will you allow it to pass you by? Because I believe that when we come to have faith in God's promises, that it leads to a life of hope, of comfort and peace. We come to know that Jesus offers the bread of life, and it tastes good. Thanks for watching today, and we'll see you tomorrow.